The BBC World Service, and on our website you can explore more of our programmes, from documentaries to science. Listen and download at any time by going to bbcworldservice.com. On air, online and on smartphone, this is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
Welcome to Newshour from the BBC World Service. I'm Audrey Brown. Emergency teams in Mariupol are rescuing Ukrainians from the rubble of yesterday's theater bombing. Also, the mayor of Melitopol was kidnapped by the Russians and held for 5 days is free. He has a message for the people of Ukraine. The Russian journalist who staged a daring on-air protest against the invasion tells us why she did it.
I really wanted to show the Western audience that some Russians are against war. As to the Russians, I wanted to show them you're zombified by this Kremlin propaganda. Stop believing it.
A Ukrainian minister explains what EU membership means for her country.
Membership in European Union is a very important signal of unity among European leaders, showing that they believe in Ukraine resilience, in Ukraine's victory.
All that and more after the news.
Hello, this is the BBC News with Fiona MacDonald. Turkey has revealed details of an outline peace agreement proposed by Russia, apparently aimed at halting the war in Ukraine. They were discussed in a phone call today between President Putin and the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Mr. Erdogan's chief advisor, Ibrahim Kalin, told our World Affairs editor, John Simpson, what was said.
President Putin's demands are concise, and according to Mr. Kalin, 4 of them are fairly easy to reach agreement on. They include an acceptance by Ukraine that it should be neutral in future and shouldn't become a member of NATO. Ukraine's President Zelensky has said as much just the other day. Other demands which Mr. Putin is making include a denazification clause, which, though offensive to Mr. Zelensky, seems easy enough to accept, according to the Turkish side. And there are undertakings as well to protect the Russian language. But that's where the easy part ends. Mr. Putin is also demanding parts of eastern Ukraine, and he wants Ukraine's acceptance that Crimea, which Russia seized in 2014, is now a permanent part of Russia.
Officials in the eastern Ukrainian city of Marefa say Russian troops have shelled a school and cultural centre, killing more than 20 people. Marefa is one of many places across the country that are coming under daily bombardment by Russia. In the besieged city of Mariupol, rescue workers have braved relentless shelling to search for survivors of an attack on a theatre where more than 1,000 people were hiding in a bomb shelter. Ukraine says that Russia is deliberately targeting its civilian population. Markian Lubkivsky is a spokesman for the Ukrainian military.
The main thing and the main tragedy that they are losing our people. We will rebuild Ukraine, but we will not, we cannot bring back our people. They have died.
Moscow denies that it's targeting civilians. Despite the suffering in many Ukrainian cities, Western military officials say Russia has made no strategic breakthrough 3 weeks since the invasion. Paul Adams reports.
When Western officials gave their assessments of Russia's plans before the war began, they predicted a lightning campaign with a rapid assault on Kyiv. With every day since, that assessment has changed. They no longer exclude the possibility that Ukrainian forces will fight the Russians to a standstill. They say Russian morale is extremely low and that the Russian Air Force, which they expected to dominate the skies, continues to move with extreme caution to avoid Ukrainian air defences.
World News from the BBC. The French President Emmanuel Macron has said he will steer the country through what he called the new era of crisis if he's re-elected in April. Mr. Macron said he would make France a stronger, more self-sufficient nation which could contribute to a world facing war and climate change. He promised to increase the armed forces budget to $55 billion in response to the conflict in Ukraine. He also said he would give the state more control over the energy sector. Saudi Arabian state media say the country has executed 4 more people today. 3 others were put to death on Wednesday while the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson was visiting the kingdom to discuss oil supplies. These latest executions follow those of 81 prisoners in a single day there last week. The British ferry company P&O has sacked more than a quarter of its staff, about 800 people, with immediate effect. The firm, which has been hard hit by the pandemic, said it would have no future without the changes. While crew members were being dismissed on Zoom, replacement workers were waiting on buses at the quayside. Speaking in Parliament, the British Transport Minister, Robert Courts, said he was concerned and angry at the way that staff had been treated.
These are hard-working, dedicated staff who have given years in service to P&O. The way they have been treated today is wholly unacceptable. And my thoughts are first and foremost with them.
Police in Brazil say they've uncovered a corrupt scheme involving an indigenous leader and government officials who allowed farmers to raise cattle illegally within protected areas. They've arrested a director of the government Indigenous Protection Agency in the western state of Mato Grosso, along with an army sergeant and a former policeman. Large amounts of cash and a luxury vehicle have also been seized. BBC News. Hello and welcome to News Hour from the BBC World Service, coming to you live from London. I'm Audrey Brown. Rescue teams in the besieged Ukrainian port of Mariupol are searching for survivors of an attack on a theatre where more than 1,000 people were hiding in a bomb shelter. Ukraine says the building was clearly marked, warning that there were children in it. The city council said the number of casualties was unclear. Emergency teams are clearing the rubble from the wreckage while Russian shelling continues. Joe English is a spokesperson for the UN's children's charity, UNICEF.
We have partners in the city who we've been trying to contact, and obviously communication has been incredibly difficult. We've all seen the images, and then thankfully we're hearing the reports that the casualties may be low, but even low casualties, children killed and children injured. We know that 50 children have been killed so far, and these are just the numbers we weren't able to verify. So it's likely that the true toll is far higher. There's a great violation. Behind me there are kids playing in a park. This could be, any scene in Europe or elsewhere in the world. But just further over to the right, there's a bomb shelter. And when we have sirens here, these kids know what to do. They know that it's time to drop everything and get into these shelters. And this isn't a childhood. We need to be providing these kids with peace and an opportunity to start rebuilding their lives.
That's Joe English from UNICEF. Let's find out what else has been happening in Mariupol and the rest of Ukraine from the chief international correspondent, Lisa Set, who's in Kiev.
Well, our listeners may remember that yesterday at this time we were under a 35-hour curfew. Today the curfew lifted this morning, but there's been regular soundings of the air raid sirens, and we still hear, largely in the suburbs of this city, to the north and northwest, sustained Russian artillery fire. There was some very loud explosions later in the day and some huge plumes of smoke on the northwestern side of the city. We do know that yesterday the Ukrainians counterattacked to try to push the Russian forces away from the approaches to the city, but they've largely stalled on all of the approaches because of it seems, the effectiveness of the Ukrainian resistance, both on the ground and the air defense systems. But we did also begin the day with, yet again, images of high-rise apartment blocks, smoldering ruins, either hit by Russian missiles or the fragments of missiles which had been intercepted by Ukrainian surface-to-air missiles.
And yesterday also, Lisa, we were talking about Mariupol and the bombing of the theater. Is there an update on whether there were any casualties and what's happening now with the aftermath?
Yes, there was such great fear last night when the reports first emerged that this beautiful, elegant white theater in the city center, cultural landmark, had come under fire. A direct target, said President Zelensky, even though Russia denied it. But then this morning, by the broad light of day, we heard from the emergency services that the theater's very solid basement bunker did its work, that the some 1,000 people, mainly women and children, who'd been sheltering in the theater when it came under attack. We understand that most of them survived, but as you mentioned, throughout the day, the emergency teams have been pulling people from the wreckage. Communications are very difficult with the town, which is encircled by Russian forces. It's like a medieval siege. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out, including communications. But what we did hear today, another tragic statistic coming from Mariupol, which is now a symbol for the agony of Ukraine, the civilian suffering, that 90% of the city's buildings have now been flattened.
That was Lisa said in Kyiv. She is the BBC's chief international correspondent. President Zelensky has said that Ukraine will not join NATO, which meets one of Russia's biggest demands to perhaps end the war. But what this means for Ukraine's future is unclear. Olga Stefanishina is Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic integration. I asked her whether NATO membership was off the table for good.
NATO is not off the table. Basically, NATO has numerously confirmed that Ukraine will become a member of NATO while we have a fully fledged war on our territory. The first element of our need is the security guarantees, ceasefire, and withdrawal of troops, while NATO is not something which is on the agenda in terms of political priorities.
But it is for Russia, right? Russia does want you to take NATO off the table completely.
Russia has put in these ultimatums both to Ukraine but also to NATO allies, and so it would be for NATO to take the decision whether they will obey the ultimatums of Russia or not.
What about EU membership for you? Will it help the war? Is it pretty much the same thing for Russia, that they don't want you to be associated?
Well, I don't have this feeling because basically Ukraine has been having an association agreement with the European Union for around 7 years, and the EU has become the largest trading partner of Ukraine, and Ukraine gained a very high position in the European internal market, and this has never been claimed as something which irritates or disturbs Russia. This was the first element, but the second element is basically membership in European Union is a very important signal of unity among European leaders, showing that they believe in Ukraine resilience, in Ukraine's victory, and upon the victory in this war, Ukraine will become a member of a political family of European nations. So it's a very important step towards supporting Ukraine from the European leaders and showing the real leadership, not by words, but by actions, actually. So I don't see the significant role of Russia in that process.
One thing that the Ukrainian president has consistently asked for is a no-fly zone. Just yesterday, Joe Biden said that that was not possible. Why is Ukraine insisting on it?
Because more than 100 children were killed by air attacks to the territory of Ukraine, and more civilians than military officers died in this war, and this war is targeted directly against Ukrainian nation. And the responsibility of not taking action towards no-fly zone lies to everybody who is now willing to take this decision, which calculates the death of each and every citizen of Ukraine with the days until this decision is taken.
I'm struck by the force of your argument. You say that you think it's inhumane. I'm quoting you from an interview that you did a few weeks ago, and you said that I think that the blood of those civilian people is not only on Russian hands. So you're effectively saying that NATO is to be blamed for the people and the children that have been killed. Do you still feel as strongly as that?
Yes, the logic Ukraine has been pursuing while making this claim, whether it would be UN or it would be NATO, is thinking not of the consequences of taking this decision, but of the consequences of not taking this decision. And it was basically combined with the message that more severe military and aggressive actions towards civilian population are expected, and it is confirmed by the intelligence data not only from Ukraine but from many other countries.
The argument against what you're saying is that Russia won't respect a no-fly zone, and it would escalate the war because a direct hit on Russian planes in Ukrainian space would widen the theater of war.
In Russian language, there is a saying that the animal is not always as frightening as you can imagine him. And unwillingness to irritate Russia is something that pursues Ukraine since 2008, when Germany and France basically stopped Ukraine from joining NATO. They didn't want to irritate Russia, but a month after they invaded Georgia in 2014, they started the war in the Donetsk and Lugansk regions and annexed Crimea. And all of this time, nobody wanted to irritate Russia. Then the war in Syria started, and then 22 days ago, the fully fledged war is now happening in one of the largest territories of Europe. And still, nobody wants to irritate Russia. There's been a lot of elements of pressure which has been done, but still, there's some more which should be done.
And that's Olga Stefanishina, Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic integration. The Russian journalist who protested against the war in Ukraine live during the TV news has told us she could no longer remain silent and on the sidelines. Marina Ovsyannikova stood behind the main news anchor on Russia's Channel 1 with a sign which read, "No war." Ms. Ovsyannikova was detained and questioned for 14 hours after this before being fined and released. She's been telling our correspondent in Moscow, Caroline Davis, why she's continuing to speak out.
There are lots of conspiracy theories building up about me. That this was a fake, that it was set by the FSB, or the time project of Western Special Forces. That's why I had to explain to the world what really happened, the fact that I'm just a normal Russian woman, but I couldn't remain indifferent after Russia invaded Ukraine. I knew that if I went to protest in Central Square, I would be arrested like everyone else and thrown into a police van and be put on trial. Half the poster was in Russian, half the poster was in English. I really wanted to show the Western audience that some Russians are against war. As to the Russians, I wanted to show them you're zombified by this Kremlin propaganda. Stop believing it. You worked at state media for years. Do you have a sense of guilt about that? I feel, of course, some responsibility lying on me. I was an ordinary cog in the propaganda machine. Until the very last moment, I didn't think about it too much. I was happy with my life, but this content was piling up. But of course, I feel responsibility. Tell me a bit about what happened after the protest. The main interrogation went on for about 14 hours. Nobody believed it was my personal decision. They were coming up with different versions. They suggested it could be conflict work. Relatives who were really angry about Ukraine, or that I was doing it for Western Special Services. They couldn't believe that I had so many objections to the government that I couldn't stay silent. What do you think your future now holds for you and for your children here in Russia? It's a hard question because my eldest son said that I have ruined the life of the whole family. Probably he doesn't understand now, but I hope in the future my children will understand this sacrifice is not for nothing. I don't know what the future holds for us. And that is Ms. Ovsyannikova, Olga Ovsyannikova, who was detained. I beg your pardon, that's the Russian journalist Marina Ovsyannikova. And a reminder that you can listen to Newshour whenever you like. We've got 3 editions a day. You can find the latest online at bbcworldservice.com. Better still, sign up for our free download. Just search for BBC Newshour podcast. Coming up, we'll hear from the Ukrainian doctors traveling from the UK to deliver medical supplies to Ukrainians in need.
I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing.
I'm a child psychiatrist. I'm not very good with the military stuff. I'm not good with guns or rifles or Kalashnikovs or whatever it is. But one has to prioritize the needs. So at the moment, the key need is that people are dying every day of bleeding.
And other headlines this hour, Turkey has revealed details of peace proposals put forward by President Putin, who suggested that he is willing to hold a face-to-face meeting with the Ukrainian leader, Volodymyr Zelensky. And the authorities in eastern Ukraine say more than 25 people have died in the Russian shelling of a school and cultural center. This is Newshour, live from the BBC in London. I'm Audrey Brown. Now, just before we came on air, I spoke to Ivan Fedorov. He is the mayor of Melitopol, a southern city in Ukraine. He was kidnapped from his office last Friday night, taken away with a bag over his head. He has now been freed from captivity in a special operation, according to Cyril Timoshenko, who is an advisor to Ukraine's presidential office. I asked Mr. Fedorov to describe his 5 days in captivity.
I was without any connections, without any information, and I didn't understand what is in my feet, what is with my family, what is with my team. And first of all, I don't understand why they take me from my office to this closed room. And where is this closed room situated? I don't understand, and nobody wants to give me any answers.
What did they say to you when they were taking you?
They didn't speak with me. They day by day didn't speak with me, and nobody who was near me keep silent because their shifts said them, don't speak with him, and it's your task. Don't speak with him.
Were they violent towards you? Did they feed you well? Were they polite to you?
One day polite, one day not polite, but they was with weapons, they was with guns, they was with many soldiers. That's why I can't say that it's polite. You must understand me. When you're situated in a small room, 16 square meters, and in this room 10 soldiers with all guns, it is not polite. You must understand it.
I do understand it. They didn't harm you physically, though, I'm hoping?
No.
So Galina Danilchenko says she's the new mayor of the city. She says she was elected by the people. What do you say to that?
We had elections in Melitopol 1 year ago and 3 months. In autumn 2021. Yes. On these elections, I was elected by citizens of Melitopol, and our team had a grateful percent of voters of Melitopol. More than 60% we take on these elections. And Galina Danilchenko don't take a part on these elections. That's why they don't elect her. And you must understand that we have rules how she can be a mayor. And she didn't admire. She crazy girl with a strange life. That's all what I can say about Galina Danilchenko.
Do you have a message for the residents of Melitopol and Ukraine more widely?
Of course I have messages, because when Russian soldiers take me from my office, they want to show for all mayors in Ukraine. And then you can't show your position that it is Ukrainian cities. You must do what want Russian soldiers. And you have lost your positions and positions of your citizens. It's nothing, because Russian Federation wants to take part of Ukraine. That's why all Europe, all peoples of the world must understand that Russian Federation come to us with war and wants to show they are powerful by soldiers and only soldiers. But our citizens
And that was Ivan Fedorov, the mayor of Melitopol, who was kidnapped last week by Russian soldiers. Now, since the war in Ukraine began, Russia has been cracking down on the media. Many news outlets have been banned and a law has been passed making it illegal to call the war a war. Within Russia, there are many who are unaware of the extent of the bombardments and the suffering in Ukraine. kHz is the senior editor-in-chief of the newspaper Helsingin Sanomat in Finland. Together with 2 other Nordic news outlets, they've taken the decision to start translating many of their articles about the war into Russian. They hope that Russians will be able to read them and stay informed about the conflict.
Our idea was actually to fill the gap of lack of independent and fact-based news in Russia after so many media entities were shut down by the Putin's regime. And so that was the beginning. So we thought that maybe our reporting could add a little bit, for the Russian-speaking population in Finland, but also inside Russia to create more understanding of the situation. We have a quite large news operation going on when it comes to the Ukrainian war. So what we're doing, we're picking a particular news or other sort of coverage of the war, and then we are just translating them and putting them online. It's HSFI news in Russia. But then doing it together with the other Nordic newspapers is something which we felt really strong about. That not only Helsingin Sanomat would do it, but along with Dagens Nyheter in Sweden and also Politiken in Denmark. And we do it together in a way that every newspaper publish their own stories in Russia, but we are linking those stories together. Altogether, that creates more articles that are daily news and other coverage.
So do you know who uses the service that you provide?
Well, initially it was evident that there are no much Russians, reading Helsingin Sanomat or Dagens Nyheter or Politiken as such, but we thought that when we are starting to do it, then it would become viral. And that has been the case. We have had until now, after 1 week, about 150,000 visits, and those visits are coming also from Russia, from St. Petersburg, from Moscow. We have IP addresses even as far as Novosibirsk. Obviously, there is a need for independent journalism and information on Ukraine and also what is happening inside Russia.
But is it a case of you preaching to the converted, that people who want to find alternative, truthful information will go and look for it, and the people that you need to reach will not?
I mean, the situation is really grave in Russia. It's obvious that we cannot really know exactly who are the Russians who are reading it. But I think it's better than nothing. So hopefully there are people that would see the situation more broadly than the Russian media that is now under severe control by the authorities. We don't know exactly who are reading it, but we hope that those stories are being widely delivered through social media.
And are the Russian authorities actually trying to stop your articles from coming into the country? Are they blocking it?
Well, we haven't seen anything like that. There hasn't been any sort of contact points or anything like that currently, and after we have started, and we hope this would not happen. Of course, we will see how this is being regarded, but we have to remember that these stories that we are publishing, they are fact-based and they are independent. So those are not against Russia as it is. They are telling the journalistic view of the situation as it is, and so I would hope that this would be not banned. But everything is of course possible in an authoritarian state.
And that was kHz, the senior editor-in-chief of Helsingin Sanomat in Finland.